Now let's look at it from another angle. When Thomas Edison was inventing the light bulb, the story is told that he said that after trying 10,000 different filaments, he hadn't failed, he just found 10,000 things that didn't work in a light bulb. Now, suppose a person were to say, tell me why those 10,000 filaments didn't work, and I'll use the same reasoning to tell you why the one thing you say works won't. I just believe in one less filament than you.
Well, you see, that's really dumb because you can obviously demonstrate that that filament does work in a light bulb. So whatever kind of evidence that you can provide that says, nope, that filament won't work. All I have to do is put that motherfucker right in a light bulb and screw it in, turn on the electricity, and voila! It either works or it doesn't. An empirical piece of evidence that shows whether or not that filament will work in a light bulb. This is vastly different from your God because there's no empirical evidence that you can give me that definitely shows that your God is the correct definition of God. Like I said before, all you have are these shitty philosophical arguments that suggest that a God exists and that it's specifically your God that exists. Me just saying, well, I just believe in one less God than you is not an argument against a God existing, and it's not an argument against your particular version of God existing. If you want to go the route of saying, well, all these other gods, we don't believe in, and so I also don't believe in this one God because of all these other gods. If you want to go that route, then I would say that it is just a logical conclusion. You're using the prior probability of all these other definitions of gods that men have come up with and using that to form a preliminary conclusion on your God existing, like your particular definition of God being the definition of God. There's nothing that differentiates this God from all these other gods over here. All the exact same kind of bullshit.
Well, again, I think you can see the problem. The characteristics of the filaments that don't work are obviously very different from the ones that do. Yes, it may be true that atheists believe in one less God than the God of the Bible. But the fact is, no other God is the all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good creator of life who came down to earth in human form and sacrificed himself for his human creatures simply because he chose to of his own free will.
You see, that's where you're kind of losing me here because let's just start off with the quality of your evidence here and the quality of your definition compared to all these other gods, right? Let's start there because you just have a book that says, oh, God has all these qualities and all of these things show that God is a true God. How does that differ from all of the other gods? All the other gods have stories, they have books, they have different things that establish their definitions, just like you have something that establishes the definition for your God, right? I'm not seeing a big difference here. All these other gods seem to essentially be of the same caliber as your God, right? All you have is a book. All they have is a book. All you guys have are opinions. Opinions are like assholes. You should know that, Kyle Butt. None of you have empirical evidence to suggest that your definition of God is the correct one. You have the same kind of evidence and quality of evidence as all of the other gods have. So it's a perfectly rational, reasonable, and logical conclusion to say that, well, your God is no different than these other gods. I don't believe in all of these other gods, so why should I believe in your God? Now, this gets into your definition of God specifically because it doesn't make a lot of sense the way that you've described him here. What evidence do you have that this God became flesh and then died for our sins other than your holy book? You don't have anything other than your holy book to suggest that. Also, why did God have to pull some holier than thou guilt trip on all of us? I don't understand that. It seems like if your God was all powerful and omniscient and all this other shit, he would have done things a lot differently. He didn't have to come down here and sacrifice himself. He could have just, I dream a genie, blinked that shit right out of existence. He could have wiggled his nose and twinkled his dick and automatically gotten rid of sin. He could have done that easily, but he didn't. He decided to come down and guilt trip us all into sucking his dick. How does that make any kind of reasonable or rational sense? There is no reasonable or rational when it comes to the logic behind God, other than human blood magic is stronger than animal blood magic, so obviously we gotta sacrifice a human. You know, like all of the other religions at the time sacrificing humans and shit. Except this time it's gonna be our God in the form of his son, who is also God. That's magical, and he could have escaped, but he didn't. So he chose to die on the cross for reasons that he didn't really have to. He didn't have to die on the cross. At this point, it just seems like some kind of weird sex BDSM thing. And so those are my problems with the logic behind the God of the Bible.
Yes, atheists believe in one less God, but it is that God, and only that God, who truly fits all the criteria to be the singularly correct answer.
I like how circular your logic is here, because it's like this God is the only God that has all the attributes that this God says are needed in order to fulfill the fact that he is the one true God. Do you understand like the circularness of your fucking logic here? I mean, you drew a perfect circle with your logic. I mean, why should we believe what this God says is the definition of the one true God, and he just so happens to fill all of these things? Like, come on, man. You gotta realize how circular your logic is at this point, and it's just fucking ridiculous. This is not gonna convince anybody. This video was obviously made for Christians, not for atheists. Or to refute atheism or anything like that. It's meant to sell to somebody that's already bought your product so that they feel better about the product that they bought. In this case, it's the God of the Bible. I mean, nobody really wants to realize they've been tricked into sucking God dick, do they?